Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our 30-minute webinar today on changes on the fly, extended check processing with BI Publisher. My name is Mike Aaron, and I will be your host and MC for the session this afternoon. A little bit about myself. I'm the president and owner of TeamCain, or one of the main owner. I have been with TeamCain for coming up on 17 years this January. I've been honored to be in the J.D. Edwards space for over 35 years. And anybody that's worked with me or seen me in sessions or talked to me know that I'm also a very proud supporter of Quest and a Quest ambassador. So when we're looking at check processing, what we're going to do this afternoon is take a look first of all at the, quote unquote, the anatomy of a check. Challenges for check processing, particularly if you're in a multi-bank account situation. We're going to take a look at a bank extension file process that we have built, as well as a BI Publisher packs that we have pre-built for checks, and talk a little bit at the tail end about some customer experiences with these processes. So if you look at a check, and this is once it's been completed, not the blank stock that you get out with, but there's a number of things on there that can change depending upon the characteristics of your bank and your bylaws. First and foremost, there's the company name that could change. The bank address and the bank name also will often change. So it could be, even if you're dealing with a single bank, there could be multiple branches that you are dealing with on it. Signatures and limits, this can often change by bank account. One of the customers that we'll be highlighting is in the property management space. Other ones that we've dealt with have been in construction or just due to their corporate structure have had a fair number of bank accounts and corporate entities. So there could be requirements for different signatures based upon different limits, and that can change by bank account as well. The micro line obviously will change as you change bank accounts, the transit information, possibly some of the other information at the beginning, and certainly the bank account will change. We've also seen where the actual wording underneath the signatures can change. So it could specifically say that 2 manual signatures are required if over $50,000 or words to that effect. So in addition to this, quite often there are things like logos. If your checks are not pre-printed with the individual logos of your company or companies and bank accounts, the logos that could show up could change as well. So there can be a fair number of moving parts that tie into the check itself and what needs to be represented on it. Setting this all up can be a bit of a challenge. Bit of a background for ourselves. In addition to J.D. Edwards, we were also the main or the master CreateForm partner for CreateForm, which is now part of Bottom Line Technologies, for a number of years. So we've certainly worked with an awful lot of customers with their checks and setting this up typically in the CreateForm or Transform scripts to work out all the logic to have all of this happen. So setting up and maintaining this can be a challenge, as we've seen. So it could be signatures, and different ones for different accounts, and different signature limits. Microline changes, bank account information changes, different logos for different companies. And also, and this is a real challenge typically with BI Publisher, it doesn't happen a lot, but quite often organizations will want an office copy of the checks printed and printed to a different publisher. And this is extremely tricky to do with normal J.D. Edwards check processing and with BI Publisher. So a lot of customers are still on CreateForm, Transform, Bottom Line, or Optio, which are all part of the Bottom Line suite now. So what we've seen, and we've certainly seen a couple just in the last 6 months, where the only thing that was holding them back from deprecating third-party product was check processing because of the complexities. What we've also seen is if that's the scenario, we're talking about it in terms of check processing, but this could also apply for purchase orders, sales orders, anything else that's out there. You're dependent upon the third party. This is not something, the ability to update the scripts and the logic in there is not something that's typically endemic or within the skill set of an organization. Therefore, there's a dependence on third parties. The third parties as well, and not trying to throw any organizations under the bus here, but we've very clearly heard from a lot of customers that if you're working with bottom line technologies, for example, there's a fair amount of inflexibility in terms of availability. The consulting rates are very high as well, and there's typically things like a 4-hour minimum. So the bill, even to just do a simple change, we need to use a different logo or a different signature for a bank, can get pretty expensive. In addition, the maintenance dollars that you have for the third-party product can add up awfully quickly. You could do this yourselves with core JD Edwards and with BI Publisher. Again, what you need is the knowledge of the sophistication to build the logic for the signatures in the BI Publisher templates, and to be able to do the same thing for logos and the logic and formatting for the microline, be able to handle and work with variable size sections and a bunch more. So although it's doable, there's some skills and some understanding as to how BI Publisher works to be able to make it work. What we've done, and this actually came out of a very specific client requirement, one that we started to work with first. They very specifically said, we'd rather not use create form transform for this. Our challenge is we've got a number of different banks, we've got a number of different bank accounts, we've got a number of different signature files that we need to use, and there's no way to do that and maintain that within JD Edwards. What we've done is we've come up with, if you're familiar with check processing and bank processing in JD Edwards, there's the F0030 bank file. So we've come up with an extension to that. It's, as you would expect, the F550030. So in this table, which you set up and maintain in JD Edwards, so this isn't some coding thing or anything else, it can be absolutely maintained by the people that maintain your bank accounts. You have the ability by bank account to override the name and address that should be printed when it's printing out on the checks. You can assign signature limits as well by bank account. So if up to $10,000 is no signatures, $10,000 to $25,000 is one signature, and over $25,000 is two signatures, you can set that up, as well as indicate the actual signature image files that should be used and the location, and that's typically a secured location somewhere on your network. You can also, and this is a recent addition that we've made to it, assign the logo to be used for each account. One of the trickier things when you're looking at the information that needs to go through to come out on a check is the microline. Each bank account, and there's an E13B specification that banks provide you with, but the characteristics, what needs to show up in what position, is very specific by bank account. There are also special characters like the hash and the on us and the dash, and those translate into very specific micro characters. So this information is also what you were able to set up and maintain in the bank account file. So in other words, what you're able to do directly with a normal JD Edwards screen is by bank account, specify overrides for bank name and address if it's not what should be coming from the address book itself, the signature information, the logo information, and the micro information to be used. So what we're doing is we're taking a lot of the logic and a lot of the stuff that you need to maintain in scripting or other places and put it back in the hands of the users who maintain and control the check process. Now, along with that, within JD Edwards, there's an R04572 and an R04572C. Most people are familiar with that. That's the actual check print program. What we have done is we have updated this, both of them, to pull in the appropriate information from the bank file extension that we've created. So the microline information, the logo information, the override bank name and address information, the signature details, all of that is being passed through. So the information that you maintain in JD Edwards is now part of the output and is therefore able to be worked with within the BI Publisher template. So again, this is all just part of the solution that's out there. We have also updated, step back for a second. one of the things that we've done, and this is across the board a couple of years back, is come out with pre-built forms for J.D. Edwards for Enterprise One predominantly. We do have some world customers as well. The pre-built forms have in it, for things like purchase orders, the ability to do duplex, multilingual, out of the gate, automatic, floating totals. Things like purchase orders can also use signatures, logo logic, an awful lot of sophistication, including floating totals, variable sized sections, placement of some of the details, etc. This extends to the BI Publisher packs that we have created for AP checks. So there's very sophisticated output out there already. What we've done is built the next level in for customers that have multiple bank accounts and want to maintain the information at J.D. Edwards. So we have updated the BI Publisher packs, both Canadian and U.S., to pull in the microline, the logo, the signature, the bank name and address, all as part of the standard output, and swept it into the BI Publisher pack with the logic as well to print it when you need. We've also built in a capability for printing an office copy of the check. And again, the way the UBE, the batch process, runs in J.D. Edwards, this is all coming through and being handled directly in the check processing in the standard 04572NC. What that means is you do not have a single PDF file at the end that you can then take and spin off to a different printer, like the non-microcheck printer, for your office copy. What we've done is we've done an update to the R04572 that you can turn on, and that will allow you to spin the output out. So we're almost emulating the check print process, but kicking enough details out to allow us to do an office copy print run and direct that to a different printer. So one of the advantages with this as well is you're using this right out of the gate. So typically there are some little tweaks that we might need to do if you've got some differences in columns on the checks. But other than that, out of the gate, it's ready to go. The other advantage, and this might seem a bit funny coming from a consulting organization, but it takes you out of call the consultant. So we knew when we were doing the create form side at TeamCain that we could count on 15, 20, or 30 calls and requests a year just for changes for AP checks. So we're trying to get customers away from that. The first customer that we worked with on this was Dream Asset Management. They're a Canadian real estate company. At the time, their footprint was they were running Enterprise One 9.4 with tools 9.14. Just as an aside, if you're not familiar with the tools in BI Publisher, there are some pretty nice changes that came out in 9.14 and 9.15. So they were running financials, including fixed asset and job cost, as well as property management and procurement. They were using Createform for their output for a long time. So they had switched an awful lot away from Createform, but they were still left with their checks. They needed regular, as they would call it, code changes to the scripts and designs. And for that, they were dependent upon the consultants. Because they were a property management organization, much like other large ones or ones that are in the construction industry, they had an awful lot of bank accounts representing the different properties that they worked with. They also had pretty regularly signing authorities and signature limits that would change. And because they were starting up new properties, starting up new joint ventures, they were adding new accounts on a pretty regular basis, and their estimate was at least one per month. They did not really have the skills internally to be able to handle the design side for it, so they were regularly dependent upon going outside for it. They didn't have the setup for it to be able to handle the complexity, although internally they had already done a number of things like purchase orders and tenant statements and had moved them over to BI Publisher. So what we did is we worked with them to come up with this customization. So from their perspective, just from an investment side, getting both the BI Publisher pack and the customization from us was offset by the savings that they were able to obtain by deprecating crate form and getting off the maintenance, and certainly for the ongoing, $700 to $800 US per change every time they wanted something. So they had both Canadian and US checks, so they took our versions of those. We incorporated the custom work for the bank and the micro extensions, and we built in processing options for the environments to use for the signatures. They took our custom bank table and the custom bank form and built up the bank account information that they would use. Obviously went through the testing for it and all that, but kind of came out swimmingly. Also, if you're doing check printing, you do require a micro font with it. So the one that we've worked with for pretty much all the customers that we've done this for is one called Morovia. So, and if you're interested in moving forward with a solution like this, we can certainly get you the information for how to find that information out, so, and where to get the licensing for it. So at the end of this, what they ended up with is no create form and no ongoing consulting needs. They have their own user control over the bank account, the signatures, the micro, the logos, etc. There was no custom code that they needed to do in JD Edwards other than what's supplied by us as part of the 04572 and the 572C. We've also recently worked with a client who also took this on and had some minor changes to it that they had already had in the 04572. So it was simply a matter of taking the small snippets of code that they had, building it into the sophistication we had, and going with that. One of the other comments, and this gentleman, Hassan, actually did a presentation at, I believe it was Collaborate last year, Collaborate or In Focus, or this year. From his perspective, there's an awful lot less debugging if something goes bump in the night, because it's all within the tables or within the BI Publisher. With this, they've also been able to simplify their footprint and their architecture, and start to finish for this, including going through design and creating the code, was a total of about 2 months. So this was not a long and onerous process by any stretch. So interestingly with this, the gentleman who was there moved on from Dream and went to another organization called United Biosource. They had only one Canadian account, but multiple U.S. accounts, all out of one main bank. They also used checks for the overflow, and they wanted to move away from that to an OR 04573. They had standard blank checks. They wanted everything done, and they wanted to do this without having to do the design work themselves. And again, they, like many others, had migrated everything else away from Createform already. So what they were looking to do was find a quick way to get away from using Createform and get the sophistication that they needed. So they worked with us. They picked up the BI Publisher packs that we offer, the AP and the Canadian checks, as well as the check overflow. They used about 3 days of consulting on our side, partly because it was a fair size change for them for some tweaks that they wanted to do to the checks themselves, and also working with them on some of the specializations that they wanted done, and doing the setup within JD Edwards for the banks and for the BI Publisher packs. So at the end of the day, for them, it took them a while to get through this, but it was mainly from the perspective of timing with another upgrade that they wanted to do, and also getting the checks out. Because they are a pharmaceutical company and have very tight security controls, if I'm not mistaken, it probably took us about 5 weeks to get through to the point where we were able to get a secured laptop delivered from them so that they could really, really torque and tighten down the actual security on it. So anyway, within a couple of months, they were pretty much done. So I'm going to stop here and see if we have any questions. Let me just pop this out so I can see. Yeah, one question in here. Oh, cool. Great. Okay. So John was asking about a 3-digit prefix in addition to the JDE check number. We've seen that with a couple of customers where it's there's a technical term for it, but it's for some extended security on it. That can be added in to the check number, John, to your question. It could also possibly be added into the bank extension table. If it's just a straight prefix and it is by bank account, absolutely. If it's to be done dynamically, then there's ways that we could accomplish that as well with counters and adding in there. So, John, I hope that answers the question, and if there's follow-ups on it, do let us know, or do let me know. Thanks. That seems to be the only question in so far, so I'm just going to continue on. For what it's worth, this is a little bit strange for us because we normally do full 1-hour webinars, and we figured this was a topic of enough interest to handle in a shorter session. So it's kind of funny to be just doing a half-hour one. Anyway, so with the BI Publisher packs, the focus here is on AP checks, and in particular the extensions that we have done on the bank file. Just wanted to let you know, if you're also looking at or struggling with or want to get into BI Publisher and some sophistication, we also have them for purchase orders, invoices, exclamation of payments, EFT notifications, AP checks, US and Canadian, payroll checks, direct deposit notices, pay stubs, payroll total compensation statements, work orders, pick slips, pack slips, tax forms, and we've done a fair amount of custom forms. We've done some tweaking, for example, for cycle count sheets for a client where they just couldn't get it going for what they wanted it to do. We also recognized when we were creating the BI Publisher packs, and this is not only for AP checks, but most of the other forms as well, that some customers are looking for sophistication and some just want a nice design without all of the other sophistication. So the Platinum packages are the most sophisticated. That includes things like watermarks, and that could be by environment, multi-language capabilities out of the box, terms and conditions including choices as to where they're placed. So last page of a single, not a duplex printed one, or on the back of every page, or on the back just of the last page. There's also options built in there for totaling and global message placement. All of these, drawing on our background of probably over 12, 13 years in forms design, are built with best practice designs for the look and feel, placement, and other things, including minor stuff like if you're printing off a portrait form and you might be mailing it, there is a specific spot that it needs to go in order to fit into a number 10 window envelope. The Platinum packages, a number of them, in addition to the sophistication, we also include some hours. If a customer is looking for sophistication, odds are there might be some tweaking they're looking to do as well. So we allow for a couple of hours of no-charge development with some of the forms. The Gold packages do not include all of the sophistications that we have built into the Platinum, but come with rock-solid design, things like on a purchase order or a sales order invoice, the detail sections need to be auto-sizing. All of the stuff like that is built in there, as well as best practices for headers, continuation footers, footers, continuation footers, etc. So, and we had one client recently that bought a new company, wanted to get them up on BI Publisher, needed a whack of stuff, so they came to us for a number of the different forms, and we put a nice package price together for them to use. AP checks, payroll checks, purchase orders, invoices, quotes and acknowledgments, pick slips, pack slips, and I think work orders as well. So, and they were able to get up and running out of the box in less than a month, including their testing. So, just in general, TeamCain, we're able to do this sort of stuff because we've been in the J.D. Edwards space for over 20 years. We do upgrades, migrations, a bunch of stuff, spot consulting, training, new module implementations. In addition to what we think is the best of breed BI Publisher solution that we've created for the market ourselves, we also work with a number of others. So if you're looking at archiving and purging in J.D. Edwards, got it covered with Purge It. If you're looking for AP automation, which is a pretty nice extension on the AP side, kind of corollary to the bank extension that we're talking about here, we have a package called ScanMan, which does that and is native to J.D. Edwards. Other similar technical products, there's an object lifecycle management and package build automation solution called Pacman, a self-service password reset tool. We also work with Dimension with their DWS Swift test and a number of other solutions that they have for the market to make the testing and migration and management of JD Edwards and mods in particular a lot easier. Been a partner with Spreadsheet Server for a long time. If your staff are Excel-based and want easier ways to be able to get directly to data and have it automatically refresh, it's a great solution. And if you happen to be in manufacturing and distribution and are not running any kind of RF radio frequency technology right now, you really should. If that's the case, we'd love to talk to you about the RF Smart solution. So right up to the end here, if this is of interest to you, and it could be at a number of levels. So number one, just BI Publisher packs and the rest of them. We do have a webinar coming up on the 14th that's going to cover off a lot more. We focused here on the AP checks and things that can be done to simplify and get you away from third-party solutions. If you have specific interest in that, love to talk to you about it. We do have a brochure on it, can put you in contact with other customers as well. With all of this as well, if you send us sample out, XML output, we can spin around pretty quickly if our BI Publisher developers are not tied up right at that moment. We can normally turn XML back to finished output for any of the forms that we do, including the AP checks, within about a half hour to let you see what it looks like. So really, really not that complicated. So we're up to the half-hour point that we were going to be looking to do here. So thank you, everybody, for your time. I will keep this open for another little bit in case there's any questions from anybody. And if not, we hope this has been helpful for you. If you're exiting out, do remember that there's the survey. If you can give us your feedback, we'd greatly appreciate it. And other than that, we hope we get a chance to check with you and see if we can help you out with your AP check printing capabilities through BI Publisher, and by extension from that, anything else in the BI Publisher side. So thanks, everybody, for your attention. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll keep this open for another few more minutes for more questions. Thanks, everybody.